Hi, I'm Josh, the Dad of Hobbies. Today's hobby are two of the best comic book writers that you'll ever meet, both in terms of personality and quality of their writing. We have
Wow.
first the masterful and most influential comic writer in the last 30 years, Mark Waid, who has written everything and anything you can imagine, including some of my absolute favorite Superman stories.
Thank you.
Yeah.
In sort of the new comic era, Philip Kennedy Johnson, who has done in a short amount of time absolutely incredible and mythological things with both Superman and several of the other characters that you all know and love. Um, and I would argue has probably written my favorite modern run on Superman because of the
Oh,
way that he defined and
I
redefined
see.
some of the lore and the story. So
Well,
welcome
thanks,
both.
Josh.
Thank you both. This the 7-year-old comic book reader who used to go to the store every Wednesday is freaking out right now right
Uh,
beside me because you guys are I grew up with Mark, and I'm now obsessed with Phillip's work, and it's a meeting of the new and the old, and the fan in me can't handle it. So
my inner kid feels the same being on here with Mark.
Oh,
Mark's done amazing work, and it's an honor to
you-
talk to him always.
you're very kind. And as you know, I'm a huge fan of your work.
so let's talk about current stuff first, right? So Mark, because you just have all the time in the world, you are currently writing World's Finest. You are writing Action Comics. You are
Mhm.
writing Justice League Unlimited.
Right?
Uh, you are writing. You just finished up Batman and Robin Year One. Philip, you are somehow writing for both DC and Marvel at the same time, which I definitely want to talk about. You've got your Adventures of Superman book, which is a continuation of your Action Comics and Superman run. You've
Yeah.
got Hulk, which is now it was Immortal. Now it's Infernal Hulk, which launches as of the time of this recording in about a week. Did I miss anything from either one of you on current stuff?
I
Um,
don't think so on my end. I don't think so.
there's my Nazi
Batman and
kill.
Robin.
Well, yeah,
Batman and
yeah.
Robin. Yes.
While Mark was writing Batman and Robin Year One, I was writing the other Batman and Robin series, and that's
Right.
while I am writing that, it's still coming out for a little while. That's been great fun. And my Nazi kill fantasy book at Marvel, Hellhunters, passion project, you might say.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. Which the miniseries finished up, and I think the trade comes out very soon. Right?
Trades out.
Is it
Trades out.
officially
Yeah.
out now? Perfect.
Yeah, it's I always envisioned Hellhunters as being a story that rather than like the TV show that never ends, it's
Mm,
like a movie length story with a clear ending, and then there's a
mm.
sequel and another one. So it's I'd like to more like an Ed Brubaker, Sean Phillips kind of series where there's
Yeah.
a very clear chapter, and then there's another one later on. We're ready to tell that one, and we'll continue to tell it in installments. So yeah,
Cool.
I'm very proud of it. I love those characters. I love comic war stories, and I kind of wanted, I don't know, I would love World War II to be kind of this corner of the Marvel U that gets explored more, almost like another setting, like
Yeah,
that gets
totally.
explored more and kind of fleshed out.
It was so much fun to read. It was just a blast. It
Oh,
was it was
thanks.
great fun. It was entertaining. It had such kinetic energy at each issue, and you told this one complete story in those five issues. That was it was really fun to not only get that history side of things, but for the characters that I don't normally go after, Ghost Rider type of thing. I don't want to give too much away. Go buy it if you're listening. Uh, it was really fun to read.
Yeah, thanks. They Marvel came like when I was just first making my bones at Marvel, they offered me at a certain point they offered me the Ghost Rider series or invited me to pitch it. And
Mm.
I was like, huh, what would I do? And I was still active duty army. I was writing like 3 or 4 books already. I was just drowning and I didn't really have the bandwidth to do it. And I was like, man, I would love that. It would be really cool, but I just don't think I have the time. But I was like, you know what I've kind of got in the back of my head though, is this idea for a World War II era Ghost Rider. If you let me do like Marvel's Inglorious Bastards, where we introduce a new Ghost Rider and he rises from the grave like the Crow and starts mowing down supernatural Nazis,
Mm.
I'll do that story. I'll give up
Yeah.
another book to do that. And they were like, hold, please. Like,
Yeah.
let's ask. And they came back and they're like, well, no, they really want it to be Johnny Blaze. And I was like, well, I'm busy. I don't know. We'll see. I don't think I can do. So I kept kind of thinking about it and fleshing out this idea for what a book like that would look like and how we could make it into a really fun, like team book. And that just kind of kept kicking around the back of my mind until I literally pitched it on a panel next to CB.
Oh, cool.
And yeah, and it got done. So that's we worked him into Hulk and characters or excuse me, readers really liked the character of Sal Romero of Ghost Rider 44. And then we got to do Hellhunters as his origin. So now hopefully that's a whole new series that we'll continue to do, over the years.
You mentioned Marvel coming to you and asking for ideas. You have both written for Marvel and DC. Is there a difference, both in terms of publication or in terms of what they expect from you as a writer for either publisher?
I don't find that. I mean, I get asked that question a lot, and there probably are some differences I'm overlooking, but by and large, part of that is because I work with Tom Brevoort almost exclusively, the Marvel editor, and I mean, not that I'm not open to working with other editors, but Tom is just so good, and Tom and I are very much in sync about storytelling, about our own influences, about what we like, and so I'm able to. I feel like I've got a pretty free reign over there when I work with Tom, and so there's not a lot of restrictions placed upon me, or whatever restrictions are placed upon me are things that I already know. Like after doing this for so long, right? I know where the guardrails are. So I I very rarely get pushback because, for going too far in one direction or the other, because I kind of know where the guardrails are instinctivly. Philip, what about
Yeah.
you? Do you perceive differences?
I perceive a difference in the energy of the places,
Oh,
but
yes. Yeah.
as far as, I mean, every organization is just made up of people, though, right? Like
Right.
it just depends on who you work with.
Yeah.
Um, and I do have one book on which I get more notes than other books, and they tend to be more focused on minutia. But that's just because the people that I'm working with on that particular book, that's not like the energy on that book. My other
Right.
book at the same publisher is not that way at all, and I get
Right.
hardly any notes at all. So it just depends on who you're working with and like how they work and how you work together. As far as what they expect, I do think that the energy is different. Like I kind of I perceive it through the lens of music. I came from the music industry before I came over here, and it feels like DC feels like you are in the trumpet section at this stately, centuries old orchestra hall that's been there
Mhm.
forever, and everyone reveres and protects the characters and the properties, and like there are maps of areas and make sure it all works together and that that everything is in keeping with the characterizations and everything, and everyone's very, I don't know, like you're part of this grand tradition kind of a thing. And at Marvel it's like there's this battle of the bands playing at this punk rock venue, and
Yeah.
you've got like 20 minutes to get your ass off the stage. Give me your ramp, just hurry up, give it to me, let's go, the next one's coming on. There's like this frenetic kind of energy to it that's really exciting and fun, but also sometimes a little frantic that kind of adds to the energy. So they feel the houses feel different to me.
Yeah.
But people are just people, and everyone's kind of got their own way of working. So, in the end, it's all just comics, and they tend to be made similar ways.
I will say one thing, which is, and you said 20 minutes to get your ass on stage. That reminded me that, Marvel has been in the phase for a long time of green lighting stuff only in 5 issue chunks or maybe 10 issue chunks. And
Right.
they won't go beyond there. You'll look at issue 10, and if it's a hit, you'll just do another number one. And I think Philip can attest to this too. There's just something special about being able to write an ongoing series without fear that you're going to have to come to some sort of artificial end, and you're able to spool things out longer. You're able to lay breadcrumbs for yourself that you're not even quite sure how they're going to pay out yet, but you've got a few issues to get there. And
Yeah.
with the 5 or 10 issue stuff, it needs to be a little more structured, and I'm not big on pre-planning and structure, so that doesn't really work as well for me.
Well, so to that end, you both have written for Action Comics,
Mhm.
right? I would argue
Yeah.
the pinnacle of the ongoing series, right?
Mhm.
Certainly one of, if not the longest, depending on who's counting and which issue you're counting from, one of the
Mhm.
longest current ongoing Superman and superhero issues. How do you both, as comic writers, continue that legacy on something so impactful to the comic industry?
If you start thinking that way, you're going to collapse under the pressure. I
You're gonna
don't know about
freeze.
Philip.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think about it that way. I just think about, I'm just going to do my best job, and not, I don't focus on the fact that it's such a long lived property, because it's not going to live or die under me. It's not going to live or die under. It's not like they're not going to suddenly cancel it because they don't like what I'm doing. They're just going to give it to somebody else. So all I'm doing is carrying a baton for a little while, like Philip did.
Yeah, that's very true. I uh it's a huge honor, and I was kind of
Oh, sure.
expecting when I got the offer, I kind of thought that they had like the wrong number. I was like, I just because Bendis was stepping away, and they offered me Superman and action, like just to tee up Tom for his Superman Son of Kal-El books. I was going to have like 5 issues or something of Superman, and then it would roll into action. And at the time, I think I was pitching like a Red Hood heist book or something, and that's kind of where I felt like I belonged. I felt like I had to kind of prove myself still a while, and I expected to have that. They have some real anxiety that people talk about when they get their big shot. But I just never felt it. Um, I just had such a clear voice for Superman in my head, and I was just so excited for people to hear it. Like whenever I read it on the page, I mean, again, not to just make this the I don't want to embarrass Mark, but like reading his work, man, like there were these moments, like moments in Kingdom Come, moments in, other books he's done over the years that really, like whenever I see it, I'm just like shaking my fist, and I kind of like that's exactly it.
You're very
It's like
kind. Thank
like
you.
the same feeling like when you see that S shield out of the first movie
Yeah.
zooming overhead. Um and like the John Williams music, like I know Clark's voice when I hear John Williams in it,
Yeah.
and I was like, God, I can't wait to put John Williams back in this book, and I was just so excited, man.
Yeah.
And I
Everybody always
just
says he's such a hard character to write. And I
I
I
don't get
pull a
that.
yellow flag on that play. I mean, it is
Yeah, I
the
never felt that way.
easiest character to write. No, yeah.
Do you find that the folks who struggle to write him are you see that in their work, as in, are there stories that you go, this is clearly not the Superman voice, right? You did Fear Left, and I don't want you to disparage any writers.
No, exactly. Not naming it.
But
I mean, I can't think of anybody right off that strikes me as boy that it's 10-eared. Um, I don't think I've read that in a long time. I think there's something about that character. There's guys who I don't think the Batman voice sounds right to me, but Superman, it just seems like everybody gets in terms of his voice, in terms of his personality. It's just because it's all, if you're reading comics, it's kind of baked into your DNA.
You
Philip,
know,
any,
I
you agree or no?
I disagree. Sometimes I
Yeah,
do read a take that's not very good in my opinion. Like, or just not that's not good. It's just not the take that I hear.
right.
And I don't need it to be exactly my Superman voice. Like I don't need it to everyone to just like go exactly with me. But I remember reading like this book by a legendary writer that is above reproach. But the take he like Superman seemed to really understand how awesome he is, and he talked about himself in kind of an egotistical way.
Yeah,
And
that's no good. Yeah, yeah,
whenever I read that, I'm like, okay, well this book is fan fiction now. Like I
yeah,
this is now no longer true. Like true. Sometimes it'll be I'll see that sometimes in like an episode of TV or whatever. Like sometimes I'll see a take that's not again to me
yeah,
is not quote unquote true. And as Mark says, sometimes Batman as well. Like I'll see a take that's too egotistical or too like too for kids without taking into account that it needs to be inspirational for everyone else too. And I
right.
don't know, there are takes that are not my own, but I don't know. I just you can't dictate somebody's voice to all the legion of writers who are going to write them over the years. They're all going to have their own take, and I have
Right.
mine. Mark has his. I find that mine lines up with Mark's very closely.
Thank you. I think that, there is a dividing line. You're right, which is that every time I hear Superman call himself Superman, that doesn't feel right to me.
Exactly.
I, the biggest crime of, all the WB shows, is the CW shows, as great as they were, was the constant banding around of hero as a word. Ah, we're a hero. Ah, these a hero. Stop. You don't get to
Right.
call yourself a hero. And if you're Superman, you don't call yourself Superman.
Exactly.
Yes.
And that's exactly right. Yeah, that was one nice thing about the moment at which I stepped into the arc is that not that's the wrong word into the mythology is that at that moment, everyone knew that Clark Kent was Superman. When he was saving somebody, even if they're from another planet, and be like, "My name's Clark, and nothing's going to happen to you." That was awesome. Like I didn't have to say, I'm Superman. Not that he should anyway, but that was a nice thing that he could just honestly say his name and
Yeah.
express to the reader that to him his name is Clark. That's what his
Mhm.
wife calls him. That's what his parents that he grew up with called him. That's what his friends call him. In his mind, his in his ear, he is Clark. and that was kind of cool to put that on the page. I got to go to Cleveland the weekend of the movie release,
Yeah.
and I was on a podcast, and we were talking about this same kind of stuff, and I talked about his voice, and um somebody like the interviewer said something like, yeah, when Superman said he was looking for me to agree with him,
Mhm.
and he said when he said, yeah, good luck with that, like somebody said you were gonna beat him up or kill him, and Superman said, good luck with that. He was like, that was it, right? That's like his true voice. I was like, no, actually, because
Yeah.
there's a lot of ego in that. Like that's
Yeah.
not to me, that was not one of the truer lines. Anyway, I digress. We can
No,
talk
no,
this
no.
all day.
I get it and I appreciate it. And you're right. We all have our own. This is my Superman, or this is the Superman that's true to me. I do want to talk about canon and continuity for a second, right?
Mhm.
On the one hand, we have Mark Waid, who knows far more about any canon and trivia that has ever existed. And one of the books I didn't mention that you just wrapped up is The History of the DC Universe,
Right.
which I'm amazed you came through being able to write without needing massive amounts of therapy. Uh,
It's something I love doing and I would never do again. Yes.
and on the other hand, as a new writer, Philip, you newish, I guess, at this point, you have to, in some aspects, either follow or at the very least consider continuity and canon. How do you guys fit in all of the canon and continuity, either Marvel or DC? It's not even Superman specific. And where do you choose to take influence from versus direct events versus just ignore? How do you play that in your head as a writer?
Look, you take that one first.
Well, for me, it's case by case, and it's all about, um, yeah, what matters is the voice. And I was trying to, okay, like for example, I wanted to tell a Metallo story. Um, to me, Metallo was a really interesting, like I had just done the, the big Mongol story, and Mongol felt like a great villain for Superman because he's like, we tried to really differentiate him from like Darkseid and Thanos and
Right.
all the other big,
Right.
muscly, funny color villains in space. Because people kind of tend to see them and like, oh, they're all kind of the same thing. Or
Yeah.
even if they wouldn't say that, they kind of, on some level, like the lizard brain level, they think it. Like, let's make him different. So how do we make him the proper opposite, the antithesis of Superman? If Superman is the champion of the oppressed, we're going to make Mongol an intergalactic slaver, somebody who has built this cult of slavery and hero worship on War World in a way that makes him Superman's true opposite, and tell a really, hopefully, a very meaningful story that matters for where we're at culturally right now, and but through subtext, tell a really meaningful story with that. And when I got back to Earth, I wanted to again give him a proper antithesis character, and this time I wanted to do Metallo instead of making him opposite of the Superman concept. I was like, what if we take the imagery of Superman like standing, deflecting bullets or like grabbing and squishing the gun or whatever, something about the gun. And I took elements of Metallo's origin to tell one that paid homage to earlier iterations of Metallo and told a story about this kid who grew up normal until a certain inflection point, and then something happened, and then he becomes obsessed with the gun. And for the rest of his life, he just can't get that gun out of his mind. He just becomes more and more that gun.
That's good. Yeah.
So the whole arc becomes itself the idea of Superman versus the gun, like the living gun. Um, if I was slavish to continuity, what do you do with Metallo? Like, do we go back to where he's this guy that weirdly looks just like Clark Kent with a mustache, and he's,
Exactly. Yeah.
like what's true now? Do we use Grant Morrison's much more recent origin of the New 52? Like in the end, I relied largely on Grant's more recent take with elements of stories I remember as a kid and of his distant past, but just like little whispers of it. Because again, you have to kind of choose what's true and what's not, and also just choose what to leave out,
Mhm.
what to respect by omitting it. Like I never said specifically whether Lex Luthor went to high school with Superman or not. Because that was always a piece of the mythology, and forgive me, Mark probably disagrees. That's part of the
No.
mythology that never quite made sense to me, but
Right.
it's there. So I just didn't talk about it. Does that make sense? I mean, you could just
Oh,
kind of,
totally. I mean, yeah, ignoring stuff that doesn't quite work for the grand vision that you have is absolutely acceptable, and I do that same thing too.
Yeah,
Well,
I
in some
didn't.
cases, Mark, you're rewriting continuity with your current action run, right? You are setting up the
Yeah,
modern Superboy origin. Uh,
yeah.
and I have to tell you, and Philip said he just said something that didn't click with him, so I can now tell you this. I have never liked the Superboy concept because I liked Clark eventually becoming Superman on his own, and I'm furious with you at how good your current run is because I
Thank
don't
you.
like the concept, and it's so good, and it makes me mad every month.
That's the whole goal. I mean, I've had that in mind the whole time I sat down. I think there are a lot of people who resist this concept, and I get it too. And as the guy who wrote Birthright, that writer is mad at me too because you can't have Birthright and this at the same time. But there's something about being able to write a Superman who is able to make mistakes and who is able to learn and who is able to discover things about himself. That doesn't play in modern continuity. He's just, yeah, he can make mistakes every once in a while, but he's not learning through making mistakes the same way that he was when he was 15 years old. And so that is the joy of it to me, to be able to write it like half Superman story, half YA novel. It's also given my chance to codify some stuff in continuity that I really like. I mean, there's just little stuff that I think still works in modern day storytelling sensibilities. I just did a story with Pete Ross focusing on the gimmick of Pete Ross was always that he knew Clark was Superboy, but Clark didn't know he knew. Which, if you look at it from one point of view, it's cheesy and cute. But if you look at it from the point of view of what a noble guy this kid is, what a huge thing this guy is doing is helping protect Clark's secret. Because Pete is the guy who every time Clark has that look in his eyes that he needs to be somewhere, Pete is the guy who, accidentally sets fire to a trash can or something. So it creates a distraction. And I think that's really cool. And it also gets to the issue of identity, revelation, who you are inside, uh, versus what you present to the world, which is very modern, I feel, and very, very topical. So there's all that stuff that, you can't take all the stuff and dust it off and make it work from present day. But I think there's a lot of stuff there that has been ignored or forgotten that I can play with. Um, Ignored and forgotten for so long that every once in a while my editor will go, "That's a great idea." And I will have to say, "It was not my idea." Yeah, that was Otto Bender's idea back in like 1962. I do love the fact that he's still wearing Converse and and a brown belt, because we had him originally in his yellow belt, and I made the point that those don't exist. You can't
Well,
go to
and
a
I don't know
store
if
and
this was
buy a yellow
intentional.
belt.
You both have some great artists on your runs.
Oh
The
yeah,
costume that Superboy has in your action run, Clark has as Superboy, is very similar to John Kent's, his son's Superboy costume. Right?
yeah,
There's a visual thematic theme which, and if it wasn't intentional, you can lie and say it wasn't, take credit for it. But the fact that the costumes are similar, you now can go back to the Super Sons run from Tomasi's era a few years ago and go, oh wait, he John pulled from his dad. That's really cute, right? Like there's a piece there that works.
sure, that totally works. That was my plan all along. Sure.
Mark, one of the things that you do so well, and it's arguably the cornerstone of how you write, is you. I don't have a better phrase than color within the lines, right? You stick to the core of the characters. You have these iconic class. The way Philip described earlier, the DC being this huge orchestral, grand ballroom.
Mhm.
You write those characters as mythological icons. Philip, you change mythology and you create modern mythology with your War Worlds runs and your Inferno
Yeah.
Hulk. You are creating new mythology in a way that, personally, I mean, I've been reading comics 30 plus years. I haven't seen before. And it's incredibly exciting as a reader to read both of these types of stories. I'm curious where both of you pull in or are influenced by
Mhm.
to get to those types of mythological structures.
So before we start, let me just underline what you just said about Philip. I mean, it's one thing to tell a Superman story. It's another one to tell a story that is going to have repercussions and is going to be one that we talk about for a while. And Philip, you should take great pride in the fact that people keep referencing the War World story in futures, in ongoing Superman stuff, and
No,
that
thanks.
the two kids are out there, and we're still plugging them in here or there. I mean, that's different than just telling like one really good Superman story.
Well, thanks very much. A lot of that was just kind of good fortune that I came in at a moment where I try to consider the context of where we'd been up until then.
Hmm.
Like there was a very humanizing Superman story set largely around the excuse me, Jesus, the
Yeah,
Daily Planet.
yeah.
And like we see so much of that of the supporting cast there. And there was just a lot of like minutia happening on a very ground level. And it just felt like time for like a big proper space epic, like Spartacus in space kind of thing.
Mhm.
And the fact that they were gearing up Jonathan to be the Superman of Earth or a Superman on Earth, it just kind of made sense in the context of where we were. Um,
But it would have made
but
me nervous to tell a long form Superman story without him in the costume for just a long period of time.
yeah, it was a risk for sure. And it was like
And
his,
I that's a risk I wouldn't necessarily embrace, but clearly you did and you made it work. So that's, props to you. And
well,
going
thanks
to
very
the
much.
issue of what Josh's question was, the difference between how you and I approach some of this stuff.
Yeah, as far as what I draw from, I guess I do. Okay, so I have my favorite books, my favorite Superman books that I
Mhm.
turned to. And Mark wouldn't remember this, but before I'd really made anything, I found you at a con and I had you sign my like paperback Kingdom Come. I had just recently gotten back into comics after many years away. And I told you uh this is my favorite book. And you said, "Ha, take that, Shakespeare." And I was like,
Sorry. Yes.
I was like,
Yeah.
that's not what I meant, but yes, it's really great. It's like my favorite comic, I should have said,
Right.
but it is amazing.
I've
Anyway,
actually brought you two together so that he could finally get some reconciliation from that
Right.
interaction. That's what this
Right.
all
Yeah.
was.
yeah, right. Anyway, it was legit. Like when I saw that book, I was just, and books like it, I was just couldn't believe how far the medium had
Thank
come.
you.
I mean, there was amazing stuff that was out when I was reading stuff
Mhm.
as a kid, but I didn't know about it. I just knew the
Right.
stuff that you could. I'd literally never seen a comic store before. I was just getting the stuff you could get at the drugstore or a Target
Hmm.
or more. I mean, more often just ripped up stuff from some dude's garage sale. I mean, that's
Right.
usually that.
Exactly.
I had a. I do not have Josh. I do not have Mark's like encyclopedic knowledge of comics. My love of
No,
comics
no
it
one
came
does.
from
Don't hold your standard to that. That's
Right.
well, yeah, my love of comics came from a reasonably small stack of books, and
Mhm.
most of them were extremely old even when I got them. Um, so anyway, came back to comics and I saw how far the medium had come, as evidenced by Kingdom Come and
Thank you.
God, I mean Irredeemable too, actually, because I was seeing all these kind of deconstructions of
Yeah.
superhero stories. Like to my shame, I had never read Watchmen, and I saw Irredeemable and noticed it, and I started reading like The Boys and Watchmen and other things that were also deconstructions in different
Hmm.
ways. Um, what Joss Whedon at the time was doing with X-Men and like American Vampire was out and Lock and Key was out, and I was just like
Yeah.
addicted by how with the quality. Anyway, so I just draw on my heroes, but also I try to draw on stuff outside of comics too. Like when people ask me about like where my Superman voice comes from, I typically say like there's a handful of reasons. There's Atticus Finch from Kill a Mockingbird.
Hmm. Clark's
There's
favorite book. Right.
yeah, I know. I
Yeah.
got yeah, but that aside, that's just such a great like Atticus Finch is such a great voice for that.
Yeah.
Many of Mark's books,
Thank you.
Grant Morrison's All Star.
Hmm.
Um, but honestly, when I was writing him, I tried to read a lot of socially conscious um, Pulitzer Prize winning journalism
Hmm. That's
to
smart.
try to write stories that Clark might have written. You know,
Yeah.
like that Lois might consider a puff piece that really like talks about somebody that the rest of us should know about. You know. Anyway, so it's I try to draw from outside of comics as well. There are specific voices I think are amazing that must be captured in for continuity's sake, but also I try to find stuff from outside of comics to color it that way. The way that I mean, my Hulk book is more Hellboy than not, like
Yeah.
not his voice as a character, but like the aesthetic of the book.
Yeah.
it's monster
Yeah.
driven, but it is in no way derivative. What you're doing with Hulk is
No.
again similar to your Superman, very innovative, very fresh. It
Mhm.
even Immortal Hulk, which is fairly recent, this does not infringe upon that. You're creating Hulk mythology modern again.
Well, thanks. Yeah, I didn't mean to get off on that. I just I don't know. It's just such a broad question, but I try not to limit myself to comics, I guess is the short answer.
Yeah. Mark, how do you keep the with all we talked about continuity with all of the
Right.
changes and with your encyclopedia brain, how do you keep the mythology, the core of the characters in each thing that you do?
You do have to pick and choose, like Philip said. I mean, and there are times when I try to adhere, but there are also times when I just go, all right, this is, we, no one's going to notice if we pave over. I mean, one of the first things I ever did was Flash. And the first story I ever told was Wally's origin. And I papered over some big stuff there and rewrote big chunks of that. And that was a gamble, but, it worked for me. And nobody seems to have called me out on it. It, I, I really try to take the Hippocratic oath on all this stuff. Like, first, do no harm. Don't go out of your way to take a wrecking ball to something that somebody else has done. But
That is such a great way to put that.
thank you. Yeah. That's how I approach it. But there's also just so much history after 85 years of any of these characters that I find there's always something to pull from if I want. I'm I'm not great at creating new villains. I'm not great at creating world building from scratch. This is not what I like to do. I mean, the reason I'm in comics is not because I am a writer. I would not be a fiction writer if I wasn't in comics. I'd be doing something else altogether. But it's because I love the characters, and writing them gives me a chance to play with them all day long. That's a very simplistic, childish way of saying it, but that really is the heart of it. I love these characters, so that's how I manage to do what I do, which is a little more hemmed into continuity, or hemmed into a more traditional take on the characters, because that's what I like. I certainly accept different takes. Everybody's allowed to have their own take on Superman unless they snap somebody's neck. That is not allowed, but everybody else is allowed.
As an arbitrary example, for instance.
As a completely
Yeah.
arbitrary example.
Not that anyone ever do such a dumb thing.
Who would do that? Who would
No.
make Superman a
Especially
murderer?
in like some
So
sort of movie, right? Who would do
yeah.
that?
Anyway, that's my answer.
If
Mark just shook loose at a better answer for me too. I kind of struggled to find the answer. I like finding places in shared universes that I feel are a little underserved, and I try to
Yeah,
flesh those out
yeah.
rather than what you said about the Hippocratic Oath. I'm 100% gonna repeat that. I
Be
will
my
credit
guest.
you,
Yeah,
but that's a great way to put it. Like the changes, the crazy swings that you take should always be additive and not destructive.
exactly.
Um,
It's
and
because it's easy to destroy stuff. It is so simple and easy to destroy stuff in comics. It's much harder to rebuild it or build it from scratch. And you need to be respectful of that because you're playing in a shared sandbox.
Yeah, exactly. There's something to be said for putting your characters through the mill, but some people kind of misunderstand that assignment and like just break some of the toys in a way that can't be
Right.
undone, and that's
In a way that
bad.
can't be undone. For these characters that have existed since before any of us that were born, there is an X factor there. It's not just everything we know about the character in terms of real world knowledge or continuity knowledge. There's also some sort of X factor there that has made these characters last. And Woody Woodpecker and Andy Panda and Betty Boop are nowhere. And I, and if we knew what that X factor was, we would continue to create characters that we were going to last forever and is going to be just as popular. So that ain't happening. There is an X factor there that we don't know. And if you break too much, I think you're in danger of breaking that, whatever that is, because you don't know what that X factor is. So that I'm also very mindful of that, and I'm very wary when people start dropping pianos on established stuff because I don't know that you're not going to break something.
if you
Yep.
took both of your approaches, right, keep the core of the character, do no harm,
Mhm.
uh, but also Philip, I mean, you are incredible at world building, right? I mean,
You were good at world
Last
building.
God in Felspar Chronicles is it? You've
Yeah,
literally developed the whole language, man. Like you built
right.
out an entire mythology on your own, and then did it twice for two incredible characters. You
Also,
two
I mean, you
together.
take bigger swings too. I think you take bigger swings than I do. So go ahead, Josh. I'm sorry.
So if you took both of you together and you were to collaborate on a project,
Mhm.
uh, what kind of story would you both want to make?
Actually, it's funny you asked that. because
Yeah.
I'm going to ask Mark to read over some stuff I'm writing because
I would love to.
I mean, yeah, I figure I had to pay you because your time is valuable. But like when I'm doing so Adventures of Superman is Book of L, right? And I'm actually writing a literal Book of L that's almost like a New Testament of Superman and
Yeah.
his legacy. And I want it to count. I want to like to matter and be around. And um I don't know. Mark just knows so much more about this mythology than me. I kind of want Mark's eyes on it to make sure I'm not doing something stupid.
You know what else I should have sent you? Because I sent it to the Superman, the core writer, Dan and Sophie and so forth. And I don't know why I overlooked you, except that Book of L is not set so much in. I mean,
Yeah, in
is and
theory, it's
isn't
like it's kind of like it's a Wonderful Life, sort of, where it's
right.
not necessarily happening.
But I took an afternoon and just poured out on paper everything I know about Krypton, everything there is to know that's important about the L family, about Kryptonian customs, about the Kryptonian language and culture and stuff. And if you like, I'm happy to send that to you. And it doesn't
I
mean that
love
you're,
that.
and it is not prescriptive. I mean, I always say that this is for you to pick and choose from if you like. I'm not suggesting that this be carved in stone. I'm just saying this is a resource from which you can pull if you are so inclined. So I'll
That'd be
send that to
amazing.
you.
Yeah, I've already done
Sure.
some like we establish like this like the Philosian colony that left super
Yeah,
long time ago, and I try to do some research into Kryptonian stuff to make sure it wasn't breaking anything and it
sure.
fit with what we already knew. I'd love to kind of share that with you and see what you wrote and make sure it all works
Yeah,
together.
happy to.
Awesome.
And to show you how ridiculous and obnoxious as a fan I am, when I was reading Phillip's stuff, I messaged him about the Kryptonian language he was using
Mhm.
because it was a different dialect than what the translation that we've had for the last 20 years. And I was like, wait,
Which sucks.
is this gone now? And he goes, don't worry, we're doing other stuff. Calm down. Go. That's enough, nerd, right?
Right.
And
Settle down, nerd. No, wait,
yeah,
when was this? What's that from? Was that from my early stuff?
you're the I had messaged you something about when you first introduced the Philogens in your initial run.
Yeah, yeah.
There was
Okay.
some
I
language.
know what you're talking
It
about.
looked visually different, and I was like, "Wait, what about this other thing?"
Yeah,
Quite
but they're a spin-off race that has been gone for a long time, and they would have developed their
That's
own
exactly it.
right,
dialects
and
Yeah,
that
anyway.
like
was his answer, and it was a brilliant answer.
Yeah.
yeah, we introduced this character named Thalkus. Like one of the Philosians says something like Haramethia al Thalkus, and Kara recognizes it because again, like she studied this shit in school. She's like, oh, it's like,
Right.
like she remembers it from Spanish class, it's like, oh my
Right.
God,
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
that's Philosian, blah blah blah. And there's this kind of a Galileo style character that kind of got in trouble for her beliefs and had this whole offshoot sect of like a Scientology type thing that they had their own place and eventually they left and blah blah blah. So and actually we established that they are they're struck from the books of records on Krypton. And so their surnames are a little bit different, and the females don't take the dad's full last name like Kara does.
Right.
Like they have names like Thawla instead of Thou, Ural Ra or whatever. Like it's like she has her own last name attached to her first name and blah blah blah. So there were reasons for all that. I didn't do it just like I wasn't just throwing stuff at the wall. Like I wanted to make sure that I wanted to be a little different, but also familiar, and we could,
Yeah.
ways we could kind of contrast with what we know about
But
Krypton.
that's what we're talking about. That level of minutia, that level of detail, that level of world building, that level of finesse.
Hmm.
Uh, as a reader, is incredibly exciting. As someone who also is trying to write comics, it makes me insanely jealous. Um, and in both instances is an incredible testament to your ability to write and the stories that you tell.
But also, I mean, in terms of world building too, if there's a world already built that works great, I feel like it's a complete waste of my time to just rebuild over that. I mean, there's again, I'm not going to use everything I know about Krypton in my stories because some of it's just hokey, some of it's silly. But the getting back to language, can we do a deep? We're going to do a deep cut here that no one cares about except for me. So give me 60 seconds. There are two Kryptonian languages. There's Kryptonese, which is somebody actually worked out, and I love this. It was E. Nelson Bridwell, who was an assistant editor on the Superman books for 20 years, and he was the smartest man I ever met and the most well-read man I ever met. He's legendary about knowing not only everything about Superman, but knowing everything about the Bible, about Shakespeare, about whatever. He just
Wow.
an amazing guy. And he sat down and he worked it out. There's a Kryptonese language that is 118 characters, and here's what they look like. There is the beginnings of a lexicon. There's a beginnings of a grammar system that he's built out that unfortunately he passed away before he could complete. And I like that because the the Kryptonian language that we have used in marketing materials over the last 25, 30 years, I totally get, but that's a cipher. That's the same. That's just a basic
Yeah,
schoolyard cipher like A equals one and B equals two. It's the
exactly.
same.
Basically a font, right?
Right. And people don't, and people don't talk like that in other planets. Um, and also, and I found, and this is where I really needed to make a distinction in the first chapter of my Phantom Zone story. I needed the villains to be screaming something in Kryptonian, but I didn't want you to know what it was. And if I had to fall back on just that cipher language that we use, like Phillip said, basically just a font, you know, if you wanted to go look up Wikipedia for an instant, you could know what they were saying. And
And
so it
there
was
will
just,
always be people who do too.
yeah,
I had
I don't know what you're
a
talking about. I
letter
don't know who would do that.
yeah.
a letterer did that one time. Like I asked for a like basically computer gibberish to be drawn in a specific kind of way,
Hmm.
and he used a Kryptonese that well a crypt not Kryptonese
Kryptonian.
what excuse yeah Kryptonian
Yeah.
one, and it was just the font thing, and you could easily decode it. And he wrote
Right.
something kind of like snarky.
Oh,
I
and
was
it's even
like,
worse. Yeah.
man,
Fuck you. Yeah.
like, do you think people are not going to find this? Like
People
that
find it
was
instantly. Yeah.
yeah
We are,
yeah
if anything in comics, as readers, we are trained to do two things. One is to immediately decode anything that looks like a code as you're reading. And the other one is to look at every weird word and try to read it backwards in case it means something. So, because,
right.
yeah.
For people who are new to getting into comics, and I mean from the writer side, right? New writers getting
Yeah.
into comics, what's the one thing that you would want them to know, Marvel, DC, Indie, whatever it is, about writing comics today?
That character is everything and that emotion is everything. I give this advice regardless, but I think it's very pertinent to modern comics, especially. When I started, the mistake I made, and this is the 1980s, so it made sense. I was looking for the perfect plot. I was looking for a perfect clockwork plot because I thought that was what a good story was. And only over the years did I realize, no, that's crazy. You know what a good story has emotion in it. A good story, you need emotion in a story. You need emotional stakes. Otherwise, it's not worth reading. Otherwise, you're just writing a crossword puzzle. And that's what I would say. Just make sure that there are moments in your story where people's blood is up, where they're engaged, where they are excited. And if you're not excited, and by the way, if you're as a writer, if you're not excited about what you're writing, the audience will absolutely pick up on that and not be excited.
Yeah, that's all 100% true. That was
Yeah.
all very well said.
Thank you.
I think that applies to other writing as well, not just comics. That's just good storytelling. I guess I would tell aspiring writers to understand that they just because of their step in the creative process of making a comic comes first, that does not mean that the art team works for you. That
Yes,
you're not
they're
like the
not art
boss.
robots. Exactly. Yeah.
Exactly. Like you guys are collaborators. You should be making something together. Again, like through the lens of music, comics feels like small group jazz to me. And if you change out any one person, the whole thing changes. Change out the drummer, the whole thing changes. Change out the inker,
Hmm.
the same thing happens. So understand that you guys are collaborators. Send the script, give them the room to make changes, look at their thumbnails. If you have notes for them, great, but also take notes for yourself. Like, oh,
Absolutely.
I overcrowded you on this page, or what if I gave you a better opportunity here, or this doesn't work as well as I thought it did. Let me make this change for you. Continue to collaborate with them throughout the whole process and take notes as well as give them and revise the letters before they get lettered after the art is done and just be part of that process the whole time and don't treat them like employees because you guys are collaborators.
It's only my story until such time as I hand it over to the editor. And then he hands it to the penciler, and it is our story.
It's a visual medium. The artist has to have a say, right?
I lived Mark's answer. Like when I was doing Felspar Chronicles, I was so in love with the world building I was doing, and I was like, oh, I love this world. I want to like look out, check out all these cool religions, and like all the um architecture is different in this part of the city than this other part, blah blah blah. And I looked at the whole thing. I was like, man, does anyone give a shit about this character though? Like the character can't be a spectator. Like he needs to be
So,
making decisions throughout this thing, and actually, it needs to be their story, and they need to be invested, and we need to be invested in them. And
yes.
as yeah, just as Mark said, it's all about character and emotion, and really getting everyone invested. And the other stuff is important, but not like character is.
Yeah. Your characters don't necessarily have to be sympathetic, which is Hollywood speak. They just have to be people you want to spend time with, good or bad. If you don't
Yep.
have people in your story that you want to spend time with, then you're screwed. The worst proposal I ever saw in my entire life, I was an editor at DC, and someone came and dropped this 75-page Bible on my desk. And it was this completely fleshed out world for this 9-issue miniseries. And it was, an enormous amount of world building. But I didn't care past page one because it was really just mechanics. It was really just world building, but not people building, but not character building.
Thank you both so much for being here, for joining me. As I said before, it's a true joy. The fanboy in me loves to talk to you guys. I love reading your work. For those of you watching or listening, you can find Mark's work in Current Action Comics, Justice League Unlimited, in World's Finest, or his ongoing Phillip. We can find yours both on Adventures of Superman, Book of L, Inferno Hulk, which comes out very shortly or will be out by the time this comes out, as well as Batman and Robin and a few other things that you're both working on.
Oh, Flash. We totally forgot about Flash, doing Flash too. So,
You've got, yeah, that's right. You've got a thing coming up with Flash, yes, which I'm very excited.
Yeah.
It's been a long time
yeah.
since we've done some Flash. So thank you both so much. And I can't wait to read what's coming out next.